Remember that this is for your understanding and so that you make a connect with what is going to be taught henceforth, right? The more you understand this timeline, the more easier it gets for you to, to put these different architects that you've studied in their particular time zone. And also it becomes very easy for you to understand what the language of design is. Okay, so let's get started with this. So very first thing is the timeline. Now, like I said, the very first thing we notice is this is the Greek architecture style. So in the Greek architecture style, what you all would have studied in your theory of in your history of architecture is that it is known for its post and lintel construction. It's a very trebiated system of construction. So by trebiated, it means that there is a post and there is a lintel. I'm sure you know what a post and lintel is, and I know what you mean by a trebiated. I know what you know what a trebiated system looks like. So this sketch is very representative of this this period of Greek, right? Now, of course, the trebiated system is like a fundamental principle of the Neolithic, ancient Indian architecture as well, and also ancient Greek architecture and ancient Egyptian architecture. So now, as you saw in the Vitruvian Triad, we saw that the styles change from one period to the next period, mainly because of form, function, and structure. So here we can visually see how the structure is changing from time to time in this timeline that is getting sketched here. So this top half is very representative of the Greek trebiated style. The next, what we see in timeline is the Roman. Now, of course, the Romans are known for their the arch, and they were also the first to use a new building material. They used concrete for the first time. So now, because there was an introduction of a new building material, and because there was an introduction of a new technology, we saw a change in the form as well. So from the Greek to Roman, there was a little bit of a change. Now once we saw technology actually kick in, and the method of construction itself changed, and you started to see a newer form, which we very famously call as the arch, right? Now, of course, when you look at the previous, this is the post and lintel. The biggest disadvantage to the post and lintel construction was the limited weight that can be held up, and the small distances between the posts. So here you can see there's a rhythm of columns. So the moment you start to put a rhythm of columns, the amount of activities that you can have is much lesser, right? But of course, the ancient, the old Greek temples, all of them, if you see them in their in the way they actually are constructed, there's rows of columns, and this is one of the biggest disadvantages, that it can take only so much load. But with the arch, it could the arch allowed for much larger structures to be constructed. If you see the Colosseum and all those ancient Roman buildings, they're much larger in size, just because of this invention of arch and the change of building material. Right? Then we have the early Christian period. The early Christian period, you would see like churches with like that cross pendentive plans. I'm sure you would have seen, you've gone through some of them in your history of architecture. Byzantine was famous for its pendentive arch, its pendentive dome. Of course, now the Romans' arch was the foundation for Romans' massive buildings. Similarly, when you see the Byzantine, the same arch is mixed with a dome, right? So now you see like there is an addition to the arch, and they used the construction what we call as the pendentive dome. And I'm sure you've covered that with your history of architecture with this example of Hagia Sophia, right? So a very famous building. And then we had the Romanesque, right? The Romanesque in the timeline, if you see, especially what they were very famous for is the series of arches. Now in Rome, you could see that they had one single arch, or even there you could see a series of arches. But Romanesque actually is a period of time where they used the same arch and in a different way, which we call as the barrel wall. Right? Also known as the tunnel wall, uh, is basically, if you see this diagram getting sketched, it's an architectural element formed by a single extrusion of a single curve. These curves are typically circular in shape, leading to a semi-cylindrical appearance to the total design. It's a very simple design. It's basically a series of arches placed side to side, as you see in the diagram getting sketched. So here again, you can see how the style has changed. Again, the structure has changed from having one single arch to having a series of arches. Of course, now if you see this particular barrel vault, it is inherently a weaker design as compared to the more complex groin vault. Now, of course, we'll see the groin vault is very specific to the Gothic period, which is what is getting sketched now. Now, of course, the groin vault was done so that they could get these high pointed arches and get the light in. Now, if you compare these two sketches here, in this Romanesque barrel vault is, the main problem here will be with the light, because it looks like a series of arches, but you can't get in the light, right? At least if you see here, these are glasses here. So automatically you get the light into the building. So there were a lot of changes done to the same system. Like you can see the same system, but it's just that it's developed into a newer style, which we call as the Gothic, which is marked by its pointed arches, right? I'm sure you're aware of this as well. You would have studied this in your history of architecture. But just make the connect as to how styles have actually changed. Now, again, if you look at even Romanesque, you look at this sketch here. It gives a feeling that the building is very. It feels like a very strong building. So basically, that sums up actually Romanesque buildings. They give this whole sense of massive solidity and strength. In contrast, if you look at the Gothic architecture, you start to see, the columns, pilasters, the arches, and you start to see a little bit of different elements that are there. Now, in the Gothic architecture, it was, of course, predominantly popular in Europe in the late 12th century, and it went on until about 16th century. So, if you look at this particular Gothic, it has evolved from Romanesque, of course, and it was succeeded by another movement, what we call as Renaissance. So, right now we are seeing everything before actually what we call as the Renaissance period. Now, this is very important for you to understand these important landmarks that are there in our particular timelines. So, right now, from this point, whatever we saw, Greek, Roman, Early Christian, Byzantine, Romanesque, Gothic, just simple diagrams that show the evolution of how these forms have changed from the truncated form to the arched form to the series of arches to the flying buttress and getting the light in through the pointed arches, which is representative of the Gothic style.